Well, my heritage, I'm coming from art. My mother was an artist, and my father was a musician, and he was a jazz musician. I'm coming from the line of jazz music, and my father wrote songs for lots of great people. He played with Nina Simone. He wrote for Nina Simone. He wrote songs for Chick Corea, George Benson. Um, he was the first black contractor on Broadway, so I had a lot to live up to as far as his 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 value of music. So it's like you can't impress the king, and you shouldn't try to because you'll never be able to.
I would tell myself, don't waste your time trying to impress people whose opinion and value you don't respect.
I was like, I gotta do something with myself here. And I looked online and saw there was a comedy show nearby, walking distance. That was helpful. Walking
is always
distance,
helpful.
Yeah. If I had to get on a train, like, oh no.
I mean, you don't really ride trains, Angela. You're always on a bicycle.
It's true. It's
Even today that it's
true.
snowing out, I looked out the window and I saw the bicycle. It's like, what?
I can't wait for a bus or a train.
Basically, I realized as I was doing them, it was my personal canon.
Yeah.
That I had learned a canon, I'd been taught a canon, and like some other like critical approaches to the canon. But I needed one for me. I needed to make one for me.
One part was a skit where I was doing a news broadcast, but a fake news broadcast, or hyper reality TV, which is hilarious if you're my age. People would understand it because there are a lot of references to cartoons and stuff that nobody knows about anymore. But so I didn't get any laughs, and I was in kind of a blackout. Not from drink. I wasn't drinking. I was just an emotional blackout while I did it, so I didn't remember. I came off stage as well. I guess that must have been 8 minutes, and
I think there is something twisted about the Lily Mortis character. Definitely, I think that was very much at the origin of the creation of the persona. I think it was darker when I only did more of like performance art and was leaning towards burlesque when I was still in London.
Yeah.
And then I think it was through the Creepers where I then kind of circled back to what I was doing long before, because I've always been a singer.
And I wanted to be a writer more than anything. And I found myself writing for a sketch show that was going to the Edinburgh Comedy Festival. And that was about 2003. And then I went to do this, and then someone dropped out, and I ended up being in the sketch show. And I can safely say it was one of the worst sketch shows that's ever been at the Edinburgh Festival. It was terrible. Like, we ended on a song that was about AIDS or something. It was of its time.
I think it's just not to believe there's one way of doing anything. I think that's just maybe the main thing I'd say. I definitely try to. I just think that when you're younger, you kind of really are programmed to believe there's one path for you.
Yes.
And then you think everything's too late.
That's how I watched Star Wars.
Huh.
I don't
think you watched it.
Yeah, no, I didn't. I mean, I wasn't allowed to watch Star Wars, but they got me the read-along storybook, so I heard
Why
Star
were you
Wars.
not allowed to watch Star Wars? Was it too sexy?
Maybe. I don't remember. I think I was just too young, and they're afraid it would be bad for my brain or something. I don't know. My Catholics are parents. My parents are Catholics.
Catholics are parents.
My parents are Catholics, and they had this book in the house called TV, the Plug-in Drug, so they didn't like exposing us to too much television, which is...
I wasn't allowed to watch Superman.
Oh.
Okay, if I make a generalization, maybe growing up in a place that is surrounded by walls, you don't want to have any walls. You think any wall is something bad.
That makes sense.
So then you define a boundary as a wall, so you don't want to put up anything that limits you, and to relearn to limit myself in a healthy way.
Right, so how do you continue to empower the audience to fully embrace the consent? Because like consent isn't a thing that's just given, right?
And it shifts.
Exactly. And so that there should always be ways for them to revoke the consent or to also to empower themselves. There's so because my idea of participation isn't like, you are my puppet, audience, you do this thing that I want you to do. And maybe you have a tiny bit of freedom. Like I give you a little bit of wiggle room. But I want you to do this thing. That doesn't interest me so much as, hey, audience, here you are empowered to take this moment. What would you like to do with it?
Well, it's a collection of short stories and poems that I wrote based on my experiences living in Poland in the 90s and the early 2000s and traveling around Eastern Europe. It's, most of them are humorous and or they're parodies of something and a lot of magical realism.
Like if you're just surrounded by people who do cool stuff and they're just casually there, that is priceless. To just know people. I mean, look
constructive. It's constructive environments.
Yes.
I've seen how it can be much more interesting than just playing
the layers.
Yeah, the layers and effects and a harmonica going through phaser and stuff like this, which you create a different type of sound. So and then I just kept on going.
Well, thank you, Rudy Stevenson,
because
you created a monster over here. There's no one like him. There's no one like you.
I struggled to know what to say on a stage in Berlin, coming from the background that I come from. I really struggled to figure out a way to relate because I felt like some of the things I had to say were just going to be like. Whoosh.
But I think that happens in regular conversation with you.
Yes. It's my life, yeah. Not with everybody, but yeah.
No, I mean, we can go on tangents together about physics and, life planning or what is it called?
Human design?
Human design.
The way Ligari is there's a pool table, there's a different room.
Right.
And then, so when I came in, I was still kind of like a little bit nervous that I'm going to be performing in it's just a complete new place. The vibe was very interesting as well because it wasn't just comedy, right? You had musicians, you have poets, you have...
Which Buzz Club also had. I mean, I think the transition was kind of smooth for that reason.
I guess so. I think I feel like I saw more...
Music.
More just other things in Slippery than I saw. But I think Buzz Club was more, it was really essentially a comedy show.
When I was 3 years old, I was like, I become a singer. And the people around me just made fun of me with my voice.
You were 3.
Yeah, but you with your little voice. And then when
How do you say that in German?
Du mit deiner kleinen Piepsstimme. Piepsstimme doesn't just only mean little voice, it means like beep voice. Yeah.
Du mit deiner kleinen Piepsstimme. Stimme.
Yeah.
Du mit deiner kleinen Piepsstimme.
And I couldn't get it was like driving a car with 3 tires. Boom, boom. So then I get...
3-tired car?
Yeah, like a 3-legged cat.
Tina Turner.
And so I gave the loop station back.
Oh, Lord. I mean, things that I remember through the filter of time. I feel like it was a show back at, I think it was still called Ligari at the time even. And I was doing music improv with Ben and Nacho.
I had this bit where I had painted a bunch of flags and I had jokes about the flags.
And he put so much time and dedication into painting these flags.
A couple days. And then one night at my show, they were stolen. I had a backpack laying around and all it had was a folder
an EpiPen?
with an EpiPen, yeah, maybe an ID or something, and these flags. And I remember going to the Neukölln police station the next day. And like, sir, what was in the bag? I'm like, flags.
Of every country.
Yeah. Some of them were kind of like fantasy flags that I twisted, but some of them are real. Like, all right, we'll let you know.
They were like, no.
If they turn up like...
It was helpful also to practice. However, I did practice just at Toastmasters.
Toastmasters. Is that like learning how to talk in front of audience?
Anyone.
Anyone.
The
So it's not
idea is like,
it's not-
I toast you. It's for people who have to give a speech at their best friend's wedding, and they're like, I don't know what the fuck to say.
Okay.
You go to Toastmasters, work it out.
Yeah, no, I didn't go to private school. I went to a Catholic school, but
They had a uniform.
Yeah, but I went to a Catholic school and I wasn't Catholic. I was the only non-Catholic in the Catholic school, which somehow fucks you up more than being a Catholic.
What were you?
I was just nothing.
Ever since I was a little kid, I always admired comedians, and I thought I'd like to be one. I was watching the old Borscht Belt comics on the Ed Sullivan Show, and I was too young for the Tonight Show in those days, as in the 1950s and early 60s.
Why did they call it the Borscht Belt?
Because there were all these places where the Jewish people in New York would go for the summer.
With slips, I think I've told you this before. And
I don't remember.
Okay.
You could tell me so many things. It goes, whoop.
I feel I'm far more interesting than that, but fine.
I feel like most people think that when they talk to me.
But they're more interesting than they are?
Yes.
All right, this is...
Welcome to my interview series where I'm basically...
This has broken my soul.
No, you're very interesting.
I told you so many secrets. Anyway.
I would say I'm here as the artist behind Lily Mortis. And
That's
maybe the diva, the icon, the siren, humanitarian animal lover.
This is her humble look.
It's been interesting because of this desire to really create a musical theater aesthetic with the sound is not necessarily compatible with an operatic sound.
Yeah.
Because they're very different.
No, it's more Broadway, more show tunes. More,
Exactly. The resonances are yeah. As opposed to it's very...
I'm a singer-songwriter. I used to use my heavy and sad emotions.
Used to.
Yeah, I'm growing. Didn't you hear the song I played last time? It was bouncy and make them clap and sing along.
That's true.
I used to use my sad emotions.
Radio Teddy.
Radio Teddy.
Radio Teddy, mach Spaß, mach schlau.
What's your favorite song? The toilet paper one?
There's so many great songs. Yeah, every song you hear every day.
It was like claw, claw. I
It
don't
was like going shopping and make sure you don't forget the toilet paper, that kind of song.
Because I was just that feeling of going, it went good. For someone who hasn't done a performance for 10 years, it went well.
Yeah.
But for my brain of being very used to doing comedy a long time ago, was just like going, well, that wasn't good enough.
It's a muscle.
I messed up a word. I blanked a line. I mean, I think I just totally blanked one joke, which never used to happen. So
it's a muscle. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, it's a very flabby, atrophied muscle that I thought had died.
I remember in college, I made some comment that I'd like to be a stand-up comedian, but I just don't think I'm funny enough. And everybody agreed with me. So, but there just wasn't that many opportunities. So I kind of, it was just a dream for a long time.
I kept plowing through, and I just thought I was just having a terrible set. But people were just mad at me the entire time. I got no laughs. And I thought I had some solid material in there. But as soon as I left...
This is what happens to most comics. We always think we have some solid material in there.
Until
we have an audience, we're like, maybe I need to rewrite.
It's also like usually when I have a concept of something or feeling or I want to express something and I have only the piano, the tendency of creating something that sounds sad is more likely. While when you have music behind you that pushes, you can create something differently. Or you can make something completely sad, but people still clap along and think it's so happy.
Yeah, I think your relationship to whatever value system that you grew up with, there's always this big, I think quite frequently there's a big period of rebellion.
Oh, yeah.
Where you define yourself against whatever it is that you thought the world was trying to define you as.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, for me, I would just...
I bought my loop station, bought this, and then practice and practice and practice, and finally got it. And then had my first show with a famous person from Australia, Rob Longstaff.
Yes, a shout out to Rob
And he gave me my
Longstaff.
first looping concert.
That's right.
And then I just hit the ground running.
Well, he became a monster on the loop station.
Yeah.
I used to pride myself on having the best mic technique back in the day.
Is that so?
And I'd always put the mic back in the stand with a good kind of couple of minutes left. So I do the last couple of jokes, stood there so that if I get an unexpected round of applause, I can just muck off and be like, I'm done. But no, this time I remember holding the mic and then finished, and I was like, oh God, I'm just holding here like an idiot because I forgot.
You and I actually met through Full Moon Cabaret.
Oh yeah, that was ages
I
ago.
know.
I was so young.
It was also so young.
Wait.
Wait.
I was like,
Well,
imagine it was like
this is how we were when we were young.
Cute.
So much.
Some of the things that I do in meditation is I go back to myself when I was younger and I have a conversation with myself. Usually reassuring myself about something I'm worried about or telling myself, just don't with that dude. A lot of times,
It's about that dude.
It's about that dude. It's like, just don't. He's a waste of time and energy.
I'm not supposed to know this amount of comedians. I should have a few that I like. But I know like some obscure.
No, you're a comedy nerd.
Yeah, and then I think that's...
Because you tell me things and I'm like, don't know. And then I watch the video and I'm like, oh, I know who they are.
Yeah, I grew up, my parents were products of the Great Depression of the 1930s. And so their whole emphasis was like, get a good education, get a job, and everything will be perfect.
Buy a house.
Buy a house. And well, I did all those things, but it didn't really solve any problems.
As I get older, I'm kind of realizing that the thing that you have to do things that you actually enjoy. There's whatever 7 minutes on stage you're on, if that's the greatest thing that gives you true joy, you have to do more things to have more of that.
As a bit of background for me, so I used to be a comedian in Britain for like 10 years, about 10 years ago. I haven't done it for a long time. I never spoke about kink on stage before. It was always a very different part of my life. And then now I'm in Berlin, I'm living my new life, I'm being open about kink, I'm kind of being me.
I love it to make people cry, but it's nice when it changes between laugh and cry.
Definitely.
Not only cry. So I work on the other side.
I feel that I have managed to somehow bring the bits that I had broken apart back together. I think that's the achievement of the last year. So to say, like, as you said, for example, with my language teaching, it is not separate anymore from my performance. People appreciate me because I bring that.
Yeah.
And before, imagine when I was starting burlesque, I was basically doing stuff that I like, where you see like a naked body, and at the same time teaching at a university. That doesn't really go together, so they can't know. That's why the Lily Mortis character was so important as well.
Don't carry the weight of the word on your shoulders. It's fine to just be.
Yeah, you do have a very big empathic. I'm gonna cry about that.
Yeah, I have a tendency. I do, but I also learned to.
It's all that water.
Close it. I'm air.
Well, you feel like water. Air and water are they transform into each other.
It's true. It's true.
I mean,
it's true.
Water evaporates
into air, and then air becomes water.
Yeah. Me and my friend Luigi, shout out to Luigi, had a rap group called the Norm Breakers.
The Norm Breakers.
Yeah, he was the MC. He was actually really good, and I was the DJ. I was not very good. I had one turntable instead of two, like you're supposed to have. So, like, cutting between a beat and nothing, a beat and nothing. And most of my records are like children's records I got as a kid. You know,
no wonder you love Teddy Radio.
Yeah. Like Alvin and the Chipmunks, like the Muppets.
And I think it's the kind of laughs also for me are a cool way of measuring how the power dynamic in the audience is evolving.
Mm-hmm.
Because there are definitely your loud laughers, and sometimes those are fellow comedians. Sometimes they're just like comedian stands.
I've got a really nice microphone, and I play around with, I use Odyssey or Audacity or whatever that program is called. And I'm a complete amateur at this, but I recorded my own voice.
Great.
And then I manipulated it so that it sounds more generic, just going womp, womp, womp.
Yeah, that's why I didn't recognize that it was your voice.
Yeah.
But it definitely, when I hear that.
But I put an echo effect on it a little bit. And
you need to record your laugh as well. Have you done that? Because we have all had a reaction to your signature.
There we go.
I think there's something twisted about the Lily Mortis character. Definitely, I think this was very much at the origin of the creation of the persona. I think it was darker when I only did more of like performance art and was leaning towards burlesque when I was still in London.
Yeah.
And then I think it was through the Creepers where I then kind of circled back to what it was I was doing long before, because I've always been a singer.
Berlin is challenging, but it's rewarding because no one is there to help you in Berlin.
I love Angela's definition of rewarding.
It's well,
It's
because
rewarding because nobody will fuck with you.
I mean, it's safe, so you can really be in your world fully.
It's safer, definitely. But there's a lot of cray-cray.
For me, it's safe.
I had a fantastic threesome with two fantastic musicians.
Yeah.
In the Planet Earth studio, and that's already like nearly 2 years ago. But the song Blue Sky, which is the song, which is about missing summer, so it's something that we people in Berlin
We
do
know.
relate a lot to.
Well, I remember getting a latex top from eBay that was that weird molded latex that it's like it had creases in it where it had folded, and it smelled like a kind of car engine.
I think that's the cool thing with live performance in general, but also at least what I remember of the Slips vibe is that it isn't a dead audience.
And as a personal story, so when I was about 19, my sexuality is I came out as gay when I was about 16. Then I kind of went back in a couple of years later when I was like, why do I fancy women? And I was wearing camp clothes in my hometown. I was wearing PVC and crazy stuff. And I got,
It's a toy.
I was like, hey, I like the sound of this guy. And I got beaten up.
I learned a lot from being a runner, but part of me wishes I'd focused even more on art and gotten into a better art school than the State University of New York College at Fredonia, and become a big-time graphic designer. I don't know.
In a near future, I want to release an album, which is a lot of grand piano and a lot of flute and a lot of really sad love songs, actually. But also some lighter one, because speaking about the whole circle about a relationship through meeting someone, getting to know someone, growing close, breaking apart, and then coming back together, which is a full circle.
This is a bit grim, but I was like wearing a full catsuit. I had a whole night out, super sweaty, to the point where it was a heat wave, and that one day was like it wasn't hot, so I was like, I can get away wearing the catsuit. And then the club was still had the heat from the heat wave building up, and all night I had this like trickle of sweat running down my sleeve, just coming out, and just having
Kind of
this
disgusting.
long thing. And at the end of the night, I was trying to kind of take this thing off, and as I kind of pulled it down, it was like I was a fountain. All this sweat kind of went all over quite a few people who were near me.
It's so sensory.
And I was like, yeah.
Drunk Classics is a semi-improvised show. That basically means we take the structure of a classic story and reduce it to the most important plot beats to hit, most important characters, most important arcs. And then with suggestions from the audience, we retell that story based on those suggestions.
And I walk into around Hermannplatz where someone I normally go partying with sees me, and he is shocked. And he's wondering what the fuck is happening.
Why are you dressed up like it's Halloween?
And I just, he was like, what are you, being Obama? What's this, right? I swear to God, I just went, yeah, on my way to court, you gotta fight this case, They're like, oh, good luck, man, good luck.
I did many versions of that with the dress. So there's one that's more of a dark fairy tale. There's one that was very like about homelessness, about Berlin.
Mm-hmm.
So like there's so many different.
It was the
feats.
homelessness one that
Yes,
I saw.
that's the one that you saw.
And it
right?
moved me. It was such a moving piece, and just the visual aspect of it. Your singing is incredible, as we know.
That started off as a comic strip called Bull Tales, and it was in the Yale Daily News when I was an undergraduate.
Look at him dropping Yale.
Yeah. Biggest mistake of my life was attending Yale, but
I mean, you need a balance. I'm teaching a lot.
True.
I'm a lot with people. I love when we connect, but also when I come home,
Replenish.
I do really like the silence, and I need it to
Replenish.
create also. It's part of like hearing the songs that come to me, I have to be in silence.
It's like that's like flat tire choose. Like the analogy of you didn't choose to have a flat tire, but you can choose to have the flat tire because that empowers you in that situation. Then it's not something happening to you. It's something you're choosing to experience now.
I don't know. Right now, I like programming, but I mean, it's nice to have a steady job and stuff, but it's more about the creative side of programming.
Yeah.
I actually started it because I wanted to figure out how to combine programming with comedy. I haven't quite gotten there yet, but
What do you mean?
yeah,
I'm so
exactly. I haven't
confused.
answered that question.
Like, what do you mean? Are you?
I just have the.
Are you
the-
creating an AI comic that's just going to replace all of us?
Yes,
You
Liana.
have a little Caroline bot.
Yeah. There's going to be a Sunday Slips, like an AI, Chat GPT AI
So angry.
Sunday Slips.
And it's probably more successful.
I don't know.
The German theater relies so much on
On
classics.
oohs and ahs? No.
No,
I was like,
that's the thing. On these incredibly well-trod stories. So the audience knows the story. They're there to see the director's interpretation. And okay, fair enough. The director has some kind of interesting interpretation, but they sit there and the way that they like process it is so passive. It's so internal. And I'm like, we're all here together in the same room.
Winton, we should keep telling stories about these wonderful people in your life as we go.
These are great people that I have in my life. Let me tell you.
We are slippery people. Thank you
Thanks,
so
guys.
much.
priceless.